With great power, there must also come great responsibility. It's something the first Spider-Man used to say to me. Well, I don't know if I have great power. I'm not Captain Marvel or Thor. But I use what I have to be responsible for as much as I can. Some days, that's enough. Today on the Comic Book Report, Miles Morales' Spider-Man by Saladin Ahmed Omnibus. Stick around and check it out. Greetings, webheads. This is Dominic, and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm back reviewing another Marvel Omnibus. This time we're taking a look at Miles Morales' Spider-Man by Saladin Ahmed. For those that perhaps don't know, this could basically be considered the Volume 3 in the Miles Morales Spider-Man Omnibus line after the 2 volumes brought to us by Brian Michael Bendis. This has been a long-awaited book I've been wanting to read for some time, and I'm so elated I finally had a chance to make my way through. Before we jump on in, though, I want to say a special thank you and shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link for it in this video's description, and if you see anything there you like, you can use my discount code at checkout, The Comic Book Report, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate code or link to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a great way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's go ahead and get started with today's comic book review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written primarily by Saladin Ahmed and penciled primarily by Chris Allen, Carmen Carnero, and more. The comics in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2018. As far as what this volume collects, it includes Miles Morales' Spider-Man, the 2018 series, issues 1 through 42, Absolute Carnage, Miles Morales, issues 1 through 3, Miles Morales, The End, and material from Miles Morales Spider-Man Annual Issue 1, Free Comic Book Day 2019, Spider-Man Venom, Incoming, Issue 1, and Amazing Spider-Man, the 2018 series, Issue 49 and 81. And finally, this is an oversized hardcover edition with glossy print paper stock, a sewn binding, and a total of 1,160 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, here's our first look at today's Omnibus edition. I'll say right from the top, this is the direct market cover for this Omnibus. I'll go ahead and throw up a thumbnail for the standard edition cover. I'm not sure if this direct market is still in print. If you can find it, definitely pick it up. It is my superior pick for the cover of this book. I absolutely love it. As we make our way toward the spine of this omnibus, I will say we have the titles, reproduce some of the creators, and an image on the bottom of the spine. I will say for the standard edition cover, the image is likely a little bit different on the bottom as well, but other than that and the actual cover of the dust jacket, I think all the other details of the omnibus should be identical. And as I mentioned earlier, this can be considered a volume 3 in your chronological read-through of these Miles Morales omnibuses. On the back of the dust jacket, we have a great lift from one of the covers in this book. This is really reminiscent of the Into the Spider-Verse film as far as the art style on this. The art inside the collection is quite a bit different, however, as far as the main recurring artist of the book, but I still love this cover, and I'm really happy they reproduced it on the back of the dust jacket. We have blurbs about the book, description, pricing information, contents, etc. Overall, solid dust jacket design. And speaking of that dust jacket, let's spend one more minute examining the cover of this book. Again, this is the direct market cover. This time I'll go ahead and show you the interior flaps as well, just some more verbiage about this collection, which is always exciting to see, some stuff about the creators. But I'll go ahead and spread the dust jacket out so you can just see everything at a glance. Again, this is one final look at that dust jacket, and then afterward we will go ahead and transition to the Under the Dust Jacket hardcover book itself. In this case, we have a beautiful wraparound image of Spider-Man and may or may not be some of his Spidey clones. But yeah, this is a beautiful hardback book itself, lots of black and red, Miles's colors, and I just think this was a really fun grab from the omnibus to reproduce here on the hardback book itself. Just a really beautiful wraparound image. Not really much more to say there other than I really dig it. I think the design for this book, primarily that direct market cover, is just awesome. I almost wish this was the standard cover so more people could have this edition in their hands. Okay, now let's go ahead and transition to a quick look at the binding for this omnibus. Like I said, I believe this is sewn binding. My collection doesn't really have much of an eye at all. I do think it lays fairly well open. You have a little bit of gutter loss, but nothing too critical. I think I would have loved to see more of an eye on this book, but like I said, no complaints overall. Okay, now let's go ahead and transition into the book proper, and I'll say right as I open the collection, on my copy on the left side near the bottom, you'll see a little white line. It almost looks like it could be a web design on the end of the book. No, I have a small tear in my copy. I don't think this is an issue for many collections. I just have a small little one. I just wanted to let you know that is not a cosmetic choice. That is just a thing with my book. But anyway, after that, we have the title page, publication information, a full kind of creative breakdown, a page or two. This is what we have in lieu of a table of contents. You'll have the issues, what creators were attached to which issues, and it kind of shows you what's in the book. And then after that, we jump right into the first issue of this run for Saladin Ahmed. And right from the top, as I flip through, there's just a couple things I'd like to note. For those that are wondering, is this a good place to start reading Miles Morales? Perhaps the other collections are out of print, or this just looks more interesting. I'll say yes. I think overall you could start with this volume, with this run from Saladin Ahmed, and just really dive into the character. Obviously, you miss some of his history prior to this moment, but Ahmed does a good job of creating an on-ramp for brand new readers. We get filled in on some of his close relationships, his supporting cast of characters, families, friends, things like that. Some of the villains, his relationship in the Marvel Universe. And again, overall, I think Ahmed does a great job of just playing catch up and just going in his own direction. So I think, yes, overall, if you're a new reader wanting to check out Miles Morales, you can definitely jump in on this run and do okay. That being said, I think I'd prefer to start with what Bendis did at the beginning of his journey with Ultimate Spider-Man. I did mention a few times already in this video, but you can think of this as a Volume 3 for Miles Morales. Omnibus Volume 1 primarily takes place in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Volume 2 has his early adventures in 616, which is the mainstream Marvel Universe, and then this book by Saladin Ahmed can be considered that Volume 3, picking up his solo title after Bendis exited. Now, something Ahmed introduces early on is kind of a story or narrative mechanic that I really like, is that we have all the interior monologue exposition dumps being largely reflective journal entries from Miles. We even have a class where he's talking about having to journal, and so we kind of are privy to his thoughts as if he's describing them in his own journal, possibly to an audience, possibly not, but I think that this is a great way to do that interior life exposition while giving it a believable story mechanic. You know what I mean? This is his journals of Miles, so as it were. And I really like that. And I think that was a great way to see the character develop, mature, and again, just get into that interior life in a way that felt believable, organic to the story, and I liked it. So this picks up after Bendis, and we just have Miles in high school. He's growing up, but he's still going to school, trying to stay afloat. He has a really close relationship with his parents. At this point, again, kind of minor spoilers, but both of his parents know that he is Spider-Man, and they are just really unbelievably supportive. I really like that wrinkle as well. We have a full, whole, intact family dynamic for Miles at his base, but he's also at this boarding school where he's kind of living on his own, but he's trying to manage school, family, friends, and all his superheroics as Spider-Man. And I really like that. I think overall this is a really great foundation that Bendis laid previously and then Ahmed builds on. One of the notable aspects about this run that I also really enjoyed is I think that Ahmed did a great job of, if Bendis established Miles in his own universe and in his own 616 corner of Marvel, I think what Ahmed did to elevate it is maybe give him more unique original supporting cast of characters. Obviously, Bendis set up his whole main crew, but I think Ahmed is adding more players. We have some new love interests introduced in Saladin Ahmed's run. We have some new villains that are made just for Miles. It's not Miles taking on Peter Parker's villains or some of the other Marvel villains, although we do have some overlap, and that does happen in these pages. But Miles has villains all his own. And while I don't know if they'll have the staying power as some of Spider-Man, Peter Parker's main baddies, I do think they're really interesting. They lead to really great character moments for Miles, and I think they were super well utilized. Now, at this juncture, I would like to go ahead and commend Ahmed as well, because I think he struck a really good balance of taking Miles in a decisive new direction, while simultaneously not taking a big enough swing that alienated all of Miles's pre-existing audience. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does in my brain. I think that Ahmed did a great job of pushing Miles forward, maybe giving a couple new spokes in that wheel, adding to the mythos in really meaningful ways. But again, we're not in such a huge departure for this character that he's unrecognizable of what came before. So in that way, I think it's actually kind of a perfect balance. I think if you enjoyed what Bendis did with Miles, you have a really safe shot of enjoying Ahmed's run as well. Now, switching to the art for a moment, this is not Pacelli's work from the earliest Bendis stuff, but we do have some great artists attached to this book as well, and you have a very good grasp of the character models and style right from the jump. I think that all of the characters were immediately recognizable, even under new artists, which was really nice, and I think that it had its own visual style for this run that separated it out from what came before. I have no complaints whatsoever on the art in this book. I thought it was all fantastic, and I think overall I was really impressed by this book because I think that I had heard generally mixed reviews. I will say I never heard anything terrible about this run. I just never heard anything particularly remarkable about it. But I will say, reading it myself, I found it to be even better than I had hoped. I feel like perhaps the bar by which I was judging it was perfectly placed, and reading it, it just went a little bit over, so I was left with such a satisfying reading experience doing this from cover to cover. As far as notable story arcs in this collection, I'm just going to kind of bounce around some of my favorite. This is by no means a comprehensive list of every story included, but again, just some that really rose to the surface as my most notable in the collection. And I will say there are a couple overarching plot lines that we see developed throughout this run, but largely these feel like self-contained stories, just with a couple avenues of overlap. Now, the first story arc I should mention is we have Miles Morales teaming up with the Rhino to take down a kind of child trafficking enslavement ring. This was a really fun team up between Rhino and Miles. Rhino is obviously more often painted as a villain in the Spider-Man mythos, but to have him as kind of an uneasy ally on the side of right was a real treat for me as a longer-term Spider-Man fan. The art in this story arc too near the beginning was absolutely jaw-dropping, I thought. This arc also had a notable appearance for Captain America, and seeing the three of them fight the baddies was just really a blast. Another story arc that's really worth mentioning for me is the introduction of the character of Starling. This is like the granddaughter of Adrian Toomes, or grandniece or something, and basically she is related to the Vulture, who really grew up kind of idealizing and putting on a pedestal her grandfather or great uncle or whatever he is, the Vulture, unaware of some of his checkered past. Or rather, she's only heard parts of it, and to his perspective, and to kind of buy her allegiance toward him. At any rate, she has her own flight suit and is taking up her own mantle as a character known as Starling. This character is initially almost a femme fatale, kind of a foil for Miles in the beginning. She, of course, kind of initially doesn't like him because he's a Spider-Man and she's a Vulture, essentially. But throughout the run, we have her really warming up to Miles. They become allies, they become friends, and toward the end of the book they even develop a relationship, which is really cool to see. There were other relationships in Miles' past, even some depicted in this book a bit, but his relationship with Starling is really a standout. The fact that they both kind of dress up, fight crime, or about the city makes them kind of uniquely suited for each other, and I really like to see kind of their budding romance throughout this book here and there. A big story arc as well that is very, very cool. It's honestly one of my highlights as well, is when Miles is kidnapped by this weird organization and essentially experimented on. He's tortured, he's manipulated, he's tested, and you don't really know what's happening, but Miles can't get away. This leads to a kind of breakout, kind of mini action heist issue or two with the Prowler, Miles's Uncle Aaron, and then his father, who is kind of a SHIELD agent, ex-SHIELD agent, who team up to basically try to liberate Miles once they find out he's gone missing and know where to get him. This is a really, really fantastic story that really pushes Miles to the edge. In fact, this is one of his biggest kind of breaking points I've ever seen in the character's history, and it was just really well done. And I think it was a really cool way to roll in his dad and his uncle, who is the Prowler. And overall, this was just a tremendous story arc and introduced us to a really chilling villain or two and kind of dynamic in Miles's world. In this omnibus as well, we have the Absolute Carnage tie-ins where Miles is kind of under sway of the symbiotes during that whole saga. If you've read the Venom, Donny Cates era, this is definitely a really cool, prominent story arc. We also have some tie-in a little bit to King in Black, but overall they leave Miles's run here fairly alone, which I like because I don't feel like he's too bogged into this event or that event. For the most part, this sticks within Saladin Ahmed's run without having to tie in too much to a bunch of different events that don't feel related. Like I said, we do have Absolute Carnage and we do have kind of a King in Black tie-in, but I think without those, I think for the most part we just are straight to work here. And luckily with those, I think they wrote it in such a way that it makes sense, and because it's a symbiote and it's a Spider-Man title, I still think that there's some good connective tissue there, that the tie-ins don't feel that far of a stretch. And yeah, I thought they were really good. They were really fun issues, and I think if you've enjoyed those events, reading these tie-ins are definitely fun. The other kind of big story arc I really want to talk about, and this is a decisive portion of the back end of the omnibus, which I know, again, I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm just kind of scattershotting my favorite parts. The last story arc I really want to discuss is Miles Morales' own Clone Saga. That's right, you heard it right. I know that Spider-Man had his Clone Saga. That is a highly contested run that a lot of people don't seem to like. I know Ultimate Spider-Man had his own Clone Saga. Spider-Man just has a lot of clones, so it feels right that Miles got his own Clone Saga of sorts. What I really enjoyed about it, though, is that it actually linked it up to that earlier story arc where he was captured, tested, experimented on. Presumably the organization or powers that be behind that sampled his DNA and took enough that they were able to create batches of clones. Now, these clones really start to expire after a short period of time, but it leads to a lot of really intense battles and conflicts between Miles, and he feels really alienated when he's fighting someone with his face and presumably his abilities. But this story arc really begins to grow, and we ultimately find this kind of fringe group of clones that basically can last longer than the 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever, and they've kind of developed in certain ways that are a bit abnormal. We have one that is sort of their ringleader that is the most intact, but he's extremely brutal and vicious, and he's trying to take down Miles, his family, people close to him, even kidnapping his newborn baby sister, which is just insidious and crazy. We have another one of these guys being kind of a big brute, sort of not Sandman-like, but he kind of can goop up and change his shape in different ways. He can't really talk. And then we have this other one that looks a lot more spider-like, that has this kind of mental psychic ability that really messes with Miles and people around him. And these people can really just manipulate Miles, and it gets really intense. Like I said, they try to almost take his place. Miles gets caught in this conflict, and anyway, that story develops in a way that I absolutely loved. It was thrilling, and honestly, it only bore a real passing resemblance to the Peter Parker Clone Saga. I felt like this was really its own thing. We did have a great Peter Parker Spider-Man cameo and team up during this as well. Some cheeky lines talking about clones, which I really loved. But it was still Miles to save the day, Miles' storyline, and in the final conflict kind of moments, we don't have Peter Parker buoying this book. No, Miles can hold it up by himself, and it's a really good storyline. With this as well, we have a fun kind of parallel universe storyline where we go to this alternate reality where Miles is unable to stop his clone, and he's now taken over New York and made it a total dystopia. And this is kind of like a future like messed up universe kind of story. And honestly, it's a blast. And that's kind of where this collection ends. Again, along the way, we have so many other great stories. We have a kind of meetup with Ultimatum, who is another villain that is actually a parallel universe version of Miles, who plays in throughout multiple arcs in this book as well. And even as I'm saying all these different stories, there's even more that I'm missing out on. Suffice it to say, this book is packed. You know, we have a 42 issue consecutive run with the same writer, which is awesome. We have a bunch of tie-ins. We have some specials and clips of free issues and tie-ins with an ongoing Spider-Man title, which is fun. We have an appearance of Ben Reilly as Spider-Man during that kind of Spider-Man Beyond era. So this book's all over the place, but it was a long-running run, and honestly, I think it really sets itself apart as being a very distinct chapter in Miles' life. Like I said, if you enjoyed Bendis' run, I think you have a good chance of enjoying this as well. I love that, again, he rode that middle line between going somewhere new, maturing the character a bit, telling new distinct stories, introducing us to new and interesting villains and allies, but also, again, not alienating us with too much brand new in a way that broke the character or made him feel dissimilar. This is a recognizable and great comic book Miles Morales run, and it's one that I honestly really enjoyed. I think the last story collected in this is Miles Morales The End, if I'm not mistaken. It's this storyline where we have an old man, Miles, in a parallel universe where a lot of the world is messed up except for a small little pocket that he's kind of holding on to and protecting, and we have him kind of fighting his last battle, as it was. This is a really interesting kind of departure from a lot of the rest of the omnibus. I think it was cool that it was included here, but it's not like essential canon to Saladin Ahmed's story. We have a different artist attached that this artist is really different than what we've seen throughout the rest of the book, but again, as a kind of fun one-off issue, what-if issue, this was a really good one, and honestly, it was fun that they added it in the omnibus. After that, though, we do make our way into some of this collection's extras. We have a vast cover art gallery, variant cover art gallery, which I really love to see as always. Interestingly enough, we have full-page reproductions of covers. We also have the smaller thumbnailized versions of the covers that do a couple covers per page. So we have a little bit of it all here, but it is a pretty vast variant cover art gallery. We have some kind of behind-the-scenes artwork. Not a ton of extras. I would have loved to see a little bit more like written extras, maybe more essays or things like that. But overall, it was still a pretty good selection of extras at the back of the book that rounded out an already, again, packed-out collection. Overall, this was such a fun read for me. This was a great modern Marvel book. I think a lot of people are overlooking this era, and I think if you're interested in the character of Miles, Spider-Man in general, it might be worth evaluating. I really enjoyed it myself, and I had a blast with this read-through. I would love to know in the comments section, are you a fan of Miles Morales? Have you perhaps only seen the movies? Are you looking to get into the comics? Or if you have read the comics, did you enjoy the Saladin Ahmed run? What can you say about the run following this? I think by Ziegler, is that worth checking out? Hopefully if that gets an omnibus, I'll read that too. But anyway, this has been Miles Morales by Saladin Ahmed. Now let's give it a grade. For successfully carrying the legacy of Miles Morales beyond the Bendis era, the Comic Book Report happily gives Miles Morales Spider-Man by Saladin Ahmed Omnibus an A-. I thought this was a brilliant new direction for the character that still maintained a lot of what makes this character great. The art throughout it was consistently strong, and I think that there was more than a handful of great storylines inside. I think this is a collection that more people need to check out, and more people need to make their own decisions about. I, for one, was on the side of greatly enjoying this, and I look forward to reading more from both Saladin Ahmed and this incredible character of Miles Morales in the future. But let me know again what you think in the comments, and thank you all so much for watching. This has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, comment, and maybe check out another video on your way out. Thanks everyone, bye.